Listen, I don't know what season you in right now. Maybe you're in that dark place where it feel like nothing's moving. You praying, you grinding, you showing up, but doors keep closing. You keep asking God, when it's gonna be my time? But what if I told you your time already came? You just can't see it yet. See, God don't move on your clock, he move on your faith. And when your faith aligns with his purpose, that's when his power explodes in your favor. I done been through them nights where I questioned if God was even listening. Times I lost homies, money, opportunities, and I felt like all my effort was for nothing. But every time I thought it was over, he was just setting me up for something bigger. Sometimes the delay ain't denial, it's development. Because God ain't gonna bless you with the platform if your character can't carry it. So this message right here, it's for the ones who've been patient, who've been consistent, who've been walking through fire but still believing. I'm here to tell you God's power is about to explode in your favor. Let's break it down. 5 truths that'll help you see it, feel it, and prepare for it. See, the hardest thing about life is understanding that pain ain't punishment, it's preparation. Most people don't get that. They see a setback and immediately assume something went wrong, like they're being punished or forgotten. But the real ones, the ones that make it to the top of the mountain, they understand pain got purpose. Every loss, every rejection, every betrayal, it's God stretching your capacity, shaping your mindset, making sure you're strong enough to carry what's coming. Because favor ain't light. Blessings come with weight. And before God can put something big in your hands, he got to make sure your spirit can hold it without breaking. I remember when I lost money early in the game, I had put everything into a move I thought was solid. When it crashed, I was sick. I felt embarrassed, disappointed, questioning everything, my choices, my vision, even my calling. But with time, I realized that loss wasn't a failure, it was a foundation. It forced me to learn structure, to move with discipline, to build systems that last instead of chasing shortcuts. That loss became my classroom, my teacher. It didn't destroy me, it prepared me. And that's how God works. He'll let something break you just enough so you can rebuild stronger, wiser, more intentional. See, some of y'all are in that breaking season right now. Things ain't working, doors closing, people walking out. You praying for breakthrough, but it feels like the more you pray, the worse it gets. You start wondering, why me? But if you could see what God is setting up behind the curtain, you'd understand it's not falling apart, it's falling into place. The pain you feel is the pressure that produces power. God ain't ignoring you. He's engineering something. You might have lost your job, your relationship, your peace, but all of it is part of the setup. He's clearing the room for something greater to enter. You ever notice how when a building's about to be remodeled, they first got to tear down the old structure? They don't decorate what's outdated. They demolish it. Same with your life. When God's about to bless you, he first breaks the parts that can't sustain the new level. So don't be mad when things crumble. It just means construction started, you being rebuilt. I done seen people quit right before the blessing hit because they misread the season. They thought the pain meant punishment, but really it was positioning. Don't let your emotions talk you out of your destiny. The same storm that tries to drown you can be the one that lifts you higher if you stay anchored. And that anchor is faith. Faith that God don't waste nothing. Think about Joseph. His own brothers sold him out, left him for dead, threw him into slavery. Then he ended up in prison for something he ain't even do. If anybody had a reason to give up, it was him. But what looked like the end was just a setup for elevation. God used every betrayal, every dark night, every moment of isolation to position Joseph exactly where he needed to be. From the pit to the palace, that's what divine reversal looks like. That's what happens when God's power explodes in your favor. It don't just fix what's broken, it flips the whole situation. And that's how it happens in real life too. How many stories you heard of people who lost everything, job, money, health, then turned it around and built something greater than what they had before? That's not luck. That's purpose. That's divine timing. You might be in your pit season right now, but if you hold on and keep your spirit right, that palace moment is already written. You see, God don't let you go through pain for no reason. Every time he allows you to fall, he's planning your rise. It's like a slingshot. The further he pulls you back, the further he's about to launch you. But you got to trust the tension. You got to trust the pull, because that resistance is what creates acceleration. When I was coming up, I had days where I didn't see no light. I was grinding hard, doing everything right, but it felt like the results weren't showing. I questioned myself. But I learned that sometimes God will hide your progress so your pride don't grow faster than your purpose. He'll keep you in the dark just long enough to develop your roots. And once you're grounded, he'll let your branches show. That's when his power explodes. Not when you're chasing recognition, but when you've built the character to handle it. So if you're hurting right now, don't run from it. Don't numb it. Study it, sit in it, and ask God, what are you teaching me through this? Because inside every bruise is a blessing. Inside every loss is a lesson. And inside every delay is divine direction. Sometimes God gotta block something you want so he can deliver something you need. We live in a world that praises instant results, quick wins, easy routes. But the real ones know, the deeper the pain, the bigger the purpose. God don't put warriors through comfort zones. He puts them through combat, because comfort never made anyone great. Conflict does. It refines you, reveals your endurance, and reminds you of your dependence on him. So maybe your plan failed. Maybe they turned on you. Maybe you in a season that don't make sense. But trust this, when God's power shows up, it don't just repair what broke. It multiplies what's left. He'll take the pieces and build something more powerful than what was destroyed. He'll take the ashes and turn them into testimony. That's how favor works. It's not just restoration, it's redemption with interest. Everything you lost, everything that hurt you, everything that made you question if it's worth it, it's all part of the process. The same God that allowed the setback is the one who's preparing the comeback. But you gotta keep moving, keep believing, keep building even when it looks like nothing's happening. Because when it finally happens, you gonna realize every sleepless night, every tear, every disappointment was the setup for this moment. That's the thing about God. He don't waste pain. He transforms it. And when his power finally explodes in your favor, you won't even recognize the version of you that survived the struggle. You'll look back and say, now I see why that had to happen. Now I understand why he said no. Because without that no, you wouldn't have the strength to handle his yes. So don't let the setback make you bitter. Let it make you better. Don't let it close your heart. Let it open your vision. Every time you fall, rise with more purpose. Because that's the secret. God don't just restore you, he refines you. And when the explosion comes, it won't just bless you. It'll bless everyone connected to you. Your pain becomes proof that his power is real. That's why I tell people, don't fear the fall. Fear staying down. Because when God sets you up, he don't set you up small. He sets you up to shock the world. The same people that doubted you gon' witness your rise. The same situation that broke you gon' become your breakthrough. Because his power don't just fix, it transforms. It don't just reverse, it reveals. It shows the world what happens when faith don't fold. So if you in that season right now, hold your head high, wipe your tears, keep pushing. Because your setback, it ain't the end of your story. It's just the beginning of your setup. And what's coming next, it's about to be more powerful, more purposeful, and more divine than anything you ever imagined. God's power gonna explode in your favor. And when it does, you'll understand why the storm had to come before the sun. Faith ain't just some word you throw around when life gets hard. It's not just closing your eyes and hoping things fall into place. Faith is action. Faith is motion. Faith is building before you see the results, grinding before the applause, believing when your environment don't match your expectation. Everybody say they got faith, but most people only got faith when things make sense. Real faith is when it don't make sense. When you still show up, still invest, still move like it's already done, even when you can't see nothing but struggle. See, faith is spiritual muscle. You can't talk it up, you gotta work it out. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. That's why God don't give you everything at once, because he's testing your endurance. He wants to see if you'll keep showing up when it's quiet, if you'll still build when no one's watching. Because that's the part of the journey that separates talkers from doers, dreamers from builders. I remember them early days trying to make music, trying to be heard, trying to build something out of nothing. No label, no manager, no budget, just hunger and vision. I was selling CDs out the trunk, pulling up on people block by block, hand to hand, one person at a time. I didn't know if it was gonna work, but I believed in it. I had faith that if I kept planting seeds, one day that harvest was gonna come. And it did. Not because the world believed, but because I did. That's what faith looks like, movement in the dark. A lot of people wait for signs before they move. They want everything to look perfect before they start. But faith don't need a sign. Faith is the sign. It's the signal that you trust God enough to move even when the road ahead ain't lit. You ever drive down a highway at night? You can't see the whole road, but you keep going because your headlights show you enough for the next few feet. That's how God works. He don't give you the whole map. He gives you the next step. And when you move on that step, he reveals the next one. That's walking by faith, not by sight. The Bible says faith without works is dead. And that's the truth. You can't just pray for God to open doors you ain't even walking toward. You can't say you trust him while sitting still. Faith is movement, it's momentum, it's building when there's no blueprint. It's applying for that business license before the money shows up. It's writing that book before the audience exists. It's showing up to the gym before the results hit the mirror. You gotta move like it's already yours, because that's what attracts divine power, effort backed by expectation. See, God responds to energy, he responds to movement. When you move, he moves. When you act, he amplifies. That's how the supernatural works. It partners with your natural. You give what you got and he multiplies it. Just like that little boy in the Bible who had 5 loaves and 2 fish. It wasn't enough to feed thousands, but he gave what he had and God turned it into overflow. Same principle applies today. If you do your part, God will do the rest, but he can't bless what you won't build. Faith is also patience. It's knowing that just because you started don't mean you gon' see results overnight. A lot of people plant seeds and expect fruit tomorrow, but faith understands that process takes time. You don't see the tree growing underground, but that don't mean it ain't growing. It's just developing roots, and that's what God's doing in you. Before he elevates you, he establishes you. He strengthens your foundation so the blessing don't break you when it comes. There were years I was grinding in silence, no validation, no spotlight, just long nights, long drives, small wins. I had moments I questioned if it was even worth it. But every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself, this is faith training. God don't waste no effort. Every brick you lay in faith builds something eternal. The world may not see it yet, but heaven keeps record. And I know you might be in that same spot, working on something that looks invisible. Praying for a dream nobody understands, trying to explain your vision to people who ain't supposed to see it yet. That's okay. Faith don't need an audience. Sometimes God hides your work because he's perfecting your walk. You ain't being overlooked. You being developed. Because when it's time for your reveal, the same people who ignored your hustle gone have no choice but to respect your results. So keep building, even if it's small, even if you only got a hammer and a handful of hope. Because every nail you drive, every hour you put in, every prayer you whisper is being multiplied. You don't gotta see it to know it's working. God don't move on your clock, he moves on your consistency. And when he sees that consistency, when he sees that grind connected to faith, he releases power that magnifies your steps. It's like running a marathon. You don't sprint to the finish line. You pace yourself, you breathe through the pain. You trust that every mile matters. That's what faith is. It's the endurance to keep going when you don't know how close you are. Most people quit right before the breakthrough, not realizing they were one step away from the blessing. Don't be that person. Keep running your race. Keep pushing through the exhaustion, through the doubt, through the silence, because that next step could be the one that shifts everything. Faith is also refusing to shrink when things don't look promising. When you go through setbacks, when you face delays, that's not the time to retreat. That's the time to double down, because faith grows stronger in adversity. Anybody can believe when it's easy. Real faith is proven when it's hard. It's when everything around you says, stop, but something inside you says, keep going. That's the voice of purpose. That's God whispering, I'm still with you. Look at every person who ever achieved something meaningful. They all built before they saw it. Steve Jobs built Apple in a garage before the world cared. Oprah kept hosting shows before anyone watched. Tyler Perry wrote plays people laughed at before he became one of the highest grossing creators alive. They all had one thing in common: they moved by faith. They didn't wait for permission. They created proof through perseverance. And that's the message. Don't wait for things to look ready. Make moves now. Start now. Write that business plan, record that song. Go to that meeting, take that class, reach out to that mentor, because faith looks foolish before it looks phenomenal. You might look crazy right now, but when it works, they'll call it courage. The truth is, most people let fear rob them of miracles. They pray for God to open doors, but they never grab the handle. They let self-doubt, timing, or comparison stop them. But faith don't operate in comfort. It lives in risk. And the people who step out in faith always see the biggest favor. So keep moving, keep building. Keep believing in what God put inside you. You may not have all the answers, but if you got vision and effort, that's enough for him to multiply. Don't wait for the path to be clear. Create it. Every step you take in faith lights up the next one. That's how purpose is revealed. And when God sees that level of trust, that willingness to act before you see the proof, he'll make sure the world can't ignore what he's about to do through you, because that's how his power moves. It don't meet you at the finish line. It meets you in the middle of the grind. Isolation is one of those seasons that don't make sense until you come out of it. When it hits, it feels heavy. You start looking around wondering why certain people who used to be close don't reach out no more. You wonder why the calls slow down, the energy shifts, and the things that used to excite you don't hit the same. You start asking yourself, what did I do wrong? But the truth is, you didn't do nothing wrong, you just outgrew where you were. God's not punishing you, He's positioning you. And sometimes the only way He can get you ready for what's next is by pulling you away from what's comfortable. See, when God's power is about to explode in your life, He can't have too many voices in the room. He can't let distractions exist in your blast zone. Because not everybody who clapped for your last level can handle your next one. Some people were only meant to be part of your process, not your purpose. And it hurts. Because we human, we build attachments, we build memories, we think certain people are forever. But God sees the full picture. He knows who can handle your elevation and who can't. That's why He separates you before He raises you. Think about it like this. When a rocket's about to launch, it sheds parts as it climbs. Those pieces helped it get off the ground, but they can't survive the altitude. That's how it works in life too. As you rise, certain people, habits, and environments start falling away. Not because they're bad, but because they can't breathe at the height you're going. And you gotta stop trying to drag people to levels their spirit ain't built for. God's trying to make you soar, but you keep holding on to dead weight. You gotta let go to grow. Moses is a perfect example. Before he led millions, before he became the man people followed, God took him into the wilderness, away from everything familiar. Out there in silence, that's where Moses found clarity. That's where he found his assignment. It was in the isolation that God revealed His identity. Because when you're surrounded by too much noise, you can't hear the whisper of direction. That's why God isolates before He elevates. He wants your focus, your heart, your attention. He wants to show you who you are without the validation of the crowd. I felt that in my own journey. There were nights I was in the studio alone when the whole city was out partying, when life felt like it was passing me by. Everybody else was living fast, and I was in that room by myself, grinding, writing, building. It was quiet, but that's where I found my sound. That's where I heard God clearer than ever. He was giving me vision in silence, teaching me patience, teaching me trust, teaching me how to stand on my own 10 toes when no one was clapping. That season taught me that real growth happens in private. By the time the world sees the fruit, the root's been growing underground for years. But when you're in that quiet season, it don't feel powerful. It feels lonely. It feels confusing. You scroll through your phone and realize the people you used to depend on don't check in. You start to second guess your purpose. You start missing the noise even when that noise was draining you. But listen, isolation ain't the enemy. It's the incubator. It's where your spirit matures. It's where your discipline strengthens. It's where your faith evolves from something you talk about to something you live. See, God's trying to teach you how to stand before He lets you lead. You can't guide nobody if you're still seeking approval from everybody. So He'll strip the crowd away to show you how to depend on Him. He'll make you walk through a season where it's just you and Him so you can stop needing people to confirm what He already promised. That's why some of y'all been feeling disconnected. It's not depression. It's divine preparation. You're not losing people. You're learning who's meant to stay once you elevate. And don't get it twisted. Isolation don't always mean physical separation. Sometimes it's internal. You can be in a crowded room but still feel unseen. That's God stirring something inside you, telling you it's time to level up. He's shifting your spirit so you can start craving purpose over popularity. He's preparing you for new environments that require a stronger version of you. That version can't be built around noise. It needs silence. It reminds me of when a diamond's made. Before it shines, it's buried deep in darkness, under pressure, surrounded by heat. That's what isolation is. Spiritual pressure. It's shaping you, purifying you, forcing you to rely on what's real. Because when the light hits, you'll reflect the lessons you learned in that darkness. You'll appreciate the value of solitude. So don't rush that quiet season. Don't despise the nights when it's just you and your thoughts. That's where the next level is being born. That's where the transformation happens. You can't elevate with confusion in your circle. You can't hear divine instruction with constant chatter in your ear. You can't build legacy if you're still trying to please people who only understand temporary. God isolates you to show you the difference between loyalty and limitation, between who's for your destiny and who's for your comfort. And I know it's hard. You're gonna miss some people. You gon' question why the same folks you helped ain't nowhere to be found now. But understand, when God removes someone, he's making room for something. Maybe he's clearing space for peace, for focus, for opportunities that require your full attention. Don't fight the separation, flow with it. Because what's meant for you won't require you to chase. It'll align when you're ready. I remember one of the hardest lessons I had to learn: solitude ain't loneliness. It's strength training. It's where you build internal peace that don't break when life shakes. It's where you start depending on purpose instead of applause. Once you get comfortable being alone, you stop settling for half-hearted connections. You stop needing constant validation. That's when you step into power. And it's crazy, because the same people who disappear in your isolation will try to reappear during your elevation. When the blessings start showing, when the world finally catches on, that's when they come back like they never left. But by then, you different. You see through the energy. You recognize who was there for the mission and who was just there for the moment. That's what isolation gives you: discernment, the ability to see clearly, love wisely, and move strategically. So if you in that lonely season right now, breathe. You right where you're supposed to be. Don't fight the silence. Don't run back to what's familiar just because it's comfortable. Trust that the same God who pulled you away is preparing to pull you higher. You ain't being forgotten, you being formed. You ain't losing, you being lifted. Every night you sit in that quiet, every tear you shed, every thought you fight, it's all building something strong inside you. And when that time comes, when God finally opens that next door, you'll realize why he had to separate you before he elevated you. You'll understand that isolation wasn't punishment, it was protection. Because if you would have brought everybody with you, they would have ruined what God was creating through you. That's why the solitude came first. To strengthen your spirit, sharpen your focus, and prepare your heart for the spotlight. It's all part of the process. Isolation comes before elevation, because before God shows the world your glow, he perfects your foundation in private. And once he's done, when his power explodes in your life, you'll look back on that lonely season with gratitude, realizing that it wasn't loneliness that changed you. It was alignment. Obedience is one of those words that don't sound exciting at first. It sounds like sacrifice, it sounds like discipline, it sounds like letting go. But what people don't realize is obedience is where the miracles live. It's not the flashy part of the process, but it's the foundation that keeps everything standing when the storm hits. See, God don't bless confusion, he blesses order. And obedience brings order to your life, even when your emotions try to pull you in every direction. Everybody say they trust God, but the real test of trust ain't when it's easy. It's when his instructions don't make sense. When he tells you to leave a situation that feels comfortable. When he asks you to forgive someone who hurt you deep. When he tells you to keep serving even when nobody claps for you. That's where your growth happens. That's where his power starts to move behind the scenes. Because obedience ain't just about following rules. It's about alignment. It's saying, God, I don't get it, but I trust you know what I can't see. Let me keep it real. I had moments where obedience felt like losing. When I turned down certain deals, certain moves, certain fast money that could have changed my lifestyle overnight. On paper, it looked like I was fumbling the bag, but deep down I knew those opportunities weren't aligned with purpose. They weren't blessed. They were traps dressed as blessings. And every time I chose patience over pressure, peace over profit, purpose over popularity, something greater opened up later. That's the thing about obedience. You don't always see the payoff right away. Sometimes it's delayed on purpose so your faith can mature before your blessing arrives. You ever notice how God will test your yes? Before he trusts you with more, he'll give you small instructions. Apologize, let that go. Start with what's in your hand, and how you respond determines how much he can release next. That's what Jesus was teaching Peter. When he told him to cast his net again after catching nothing all night, it sounded foolish. Logic said stop. But Peter said, at your word, I'll do it. And that moment of obedience turned an empty net into overflow. That's how fast things can shift when you follow divine direction. It ain't about location, it's about timing. His timing. I seen this play out in real life too. There was a young homie from my city who used to hit me up for advice. He had talent but no patience. He wanted the fast road, the viral moment, the shortcut. I told him, if you build it slow, it'll last long. Don't skip the grind God gave you. He ain't want to hear that at first. He chased the hype, got a little attention, then lost it just as quick. Couple years later, he came back humble, ready to move different. He started being obedient to his vision, not the world's noise. He put in consistent work, stayed disciplined, and this time it stuck. His music started reaching people, not just numbers. That's the difference between building from ego and building from obedience. One fades, the other flourishes. See, obedience don't just unlock blessings. It unlocks clarity. It tunes your spirit to recognize what's yours and what ain't. When you're walking in obedience, you stop chasing everything that glitters. You stop comparing your lane to somebody else's. You stop doubting your timing. You start realizing that every delay is divine protection. Every no is redirection. Every closed door is an instruction to knock somewhere else. And when you move with that awareness, peace becomes your default. You stop fighting for things that don't fit your assignment. People love to say, God's power exploded in my life, but they forget the part where they had to listen first. They forget the nights they cried because obedience cost them comfort. They forget how uncomfortable growth feels when you're doing the right thing but not seeing results yet. But that's how faith works. You gotta obey before you understand. You gotta move before you see. You gotta sow before you harvest, because the explosion don't happen in the asking. It happens in the obeying. I'll be real. There were moments I wanted to quit, moments I questioned why things weren't happening faster. But every time I thought about giving in, I heard that voice say, stay consistent, stay aligned. And when I did, things started shifting. People started showing up. Opportunities started unfolding that no man could orchestrate. That wasn't luck. That was obedience paying off. Think about it. Noah built an ark when it had never rained. Abraham left his home for a land he didn't even know existed. David walked into battle with just a sling and faith. Every one of them looked crazy before they looked chosen. That's the pattern. God always asks for obedience first, then releases overflow after. Because if you can trust Him in confusion, you can handle Him in abundance. So if you're in a season where He's asking you to do something uncomfortable, don't resist it. That's the setup. That's the test before the testimony. He's not trying to limit you. He's trying to launch you. But He can't pour new wine into old ways. He can't bless a path He never told you to walk on. When you obey, you give Him permission to go beyond what you could ever plan. That's why I always say, obedience is the real hustle. Anybody can grind, but not everybody can align. You could chase money all day and still miss purpose. But when your steps line up with what God already prepared, everything flows different. The right people show up. The right doors open. The timing syncs up. It's not struggle anymore. It's strategy. It's not coincidence. It's confirmation. And when that power explodes, when everything you've been working, praying, and obeying for finally connects, you'll realize it wasn't your hustle that did it. It was your obedience, your willingness to move when it didn't make sense, your trust in the unseen. Because at the end of the day, obedience don't just change your situation, it changes you. And once you change, the overflow becomes inevitable. You ever sit in a moment so quiet, you start wondering if God forgot about you. Like you've been praying, grinding, doing everything right, but the world just still. No noise, no calls, no signs. That silence can feel heavy, almost haunting. But what I learned and what I need you to understand, silence don't mean absence. Silence means strategy. God does His loudest work in your quietest seasons. It's like the seed. It's buried in the dark before it breaks into light. You can't see it, but it's growing roots that'll hold the whole tree steady when it finally breaks ground. That quiet season. It's not punishment. It's preparation. It's where God hides you while He's working on you. Because if He gave you the blessing too early, you might not be ready to hold it. Some people want the stage before they've learned how to stand. They want the spotlight before they've built the stamina to handle the heat. But God loves you too much to let you burn before you shine. So He'll slow it down. He'll silence the noise. He'll separate you from distractions. And even though it feels lonely, He's really building your strength in that stillness. I remember that silence vividly. There were years when the buzz faded, when the phone stopped ringing, when the crowd wasn't checking. People thought I fell off, thought the dream was dead, but they didn't know God was just recalibrating the plan. He was pruning things that couldn't go with me to the next level. The team, the mindset, the old habits, they had to go, because what He was getting ready to give me required cleaner hands and clearer vision. And when that season finally turned, when everything started moving again, I saw why it had to be quiet first. You gotta understand something deep. Breakthroughs don't show up with warning. They show up like lightning. One day it's dark and then suddenly the sky lights up. But lightning only strikes when the air is still enough to hold the charge. That's how God moves. He'll quiet everything around you so His power can build pressure inside you. Every delay, every no, every season of silence is just Him loading the blessing. And when He releases it, when that explosion hits, everything that used to not make sense aligns in perfect clarity. When my debut album dropped, people called it overnight success. I smiled at that because they ain't see the nights I was sleeping in the studio, surviving off faith, trying to convince myself not to quit. They didn't see the prayers I whispered when I felt forgotten. They didn't see the hunger, the discipline, the lonely grind that built the foundation for that moment. That overnight was 10 years long. That silence was sacred. It was God's laboratory. And when the blessing finally arrived, it was loud enough to drown out every doubt I ever had. That's why you can't despise the quiet. That stillness is your signal that something's shifting. Think about Elijah in the Bible. He was waiting for God to speak. There was a wind, an earthquake, a fire, but God wasn't in any of that. Then came a whisper. That's where God was. Sometimes we expect him to show up loud and dramatic, but he speaks clearest in the quiet. And if you're always surrounded by noise, you'll miss his direction. So when life goes silent, lean in, listen deeper. That's where he's talking to you about your next move. And I know it's hard to trust what you can't see. You watching people around you winning, leveling up, getting recognition while your own road feels stuck. But don't compare your silence to someone else's sound. You don't know what season they in. You don't know what they had to lose to look like they winning. Your time coming, and when it comes, it's gonna make sense why it took so long. Because God's blessings ain't rushed. They're refined. And when he finally brings it, you won't have to chase it. It'll find you. Let me paint it like this. Imagine you in a dark theater before the movie starts. You sitting there, nothing happening, just stillness. You might think nothing's going on, but behind that curtain, the whole set's being prepared. The lights, the props, the stage, all of it's being arranged perfectly. And when that curtain finally rises, the scene unfolds smooth like it was always meant to be. That's your life right now. You sitting in the dark, but God's setting the stage. And when it's time for your act to begin, it's gonna hit perfect timing. No lines missed, no cues off beat. See, we get impatient with the process because we think silence equals failure. But silence is sacred space. It's where God detoxes your spirit from the world's noise. He's pulling out the need for validation, the addiction to speed, the pressure to prove something. He's teaching you how to move with purpose, not panic. Because when that blessing hits, you won't have time to prepare. You gotta already be ready. And that's what the quiet season is for, readiness. You ever notice that the loudest storms come after the quietest skies? That's how God's blessings move too. When it looks calm, he's charging the atmosphere. He's setting you up for a downpour of opportunity. But you gotta stay rooted in faith long enough to see it rain. Most people quit right before it happens. They can't handle the silence, so they walk away. But the real ones, the ones who understand the marathon mindset, they wait it out. They plan in faith, even when nothing's visible, because they know what's buried ain't dead, it's just not ready yet. When the noise fades, when your phone stops buzzing, when you feel like you're in a season where nobody sees you, that's the season you should get excited about, because that means God's about to make a move so big, he gotta hide you first. He's protecting your next chapter from premature exposure. The world can't see it yet, but he's setting it up in secret. So when it hits, they'll say, "Where did that come from?" And you'll just smile because you know it came from the quiet. So yeah, when everything goes still, don't panic, don't lose faith. That silence is loaded, that stillness is power. God saves his loudest blessings for his quietest seasons. The question is, can you stay faithful when it's silent? Can you still trust his promise when there's no proof yet? Because if you can hold your faith through that stillness, when the explosion comes, it's going to shake everything around you. And when it does, you'll realize that silence wasn't empty. It was holy. It was the sound of God loading your next level